Heaven Official's Blessing. Chapter 239. Audio source: WuXiaWorldAudiobook.com. Crack the white armor. Fantastic magic shattering the curse of shackles. The sword Zhu Xin was emitting a forceful aura, and those watching from afar could already feel themselves shudder from just looking at it, never mind Xie Lian, who had been forced to back away step by such attacks. Earlier, Hua Cheng could take on Bai Wu Xiang by himself and it was more than enough, but after Zhen Wu had emerged, both of them were needed in order to make the match even. The advantage of Mount Tonglu being the main spiritual domain was gradually becoming obvious, and Xie Lian could subtly sense a heavy force oppressing and restricting their side. And Zhen Wu also has a white armor protecting his body, a 1,000 years spiritual device he had forged personally, his defense practically impenetrable. He only need to protect his head. Hua Cheng's saber was incredible fast and precise. Xie Lian also struck wherever he could. The two practically struck blows all over Zhen Wu's front, from his neck, his heart, his back, his abdomen, his shoulders, but the opponent was not affected in the least. Mu Qing shouted, "Stop wasting your strength. It's pointless. That white armor can't be penetrated at all. Aim for just under his right ribs." Xie Lian exclaimed. The scimitar was unleashed again and cut where Xie Lian had instructed, but as expected, it was useless. Mu Qing shouted, "I told you it's pointless. Why don't you think of a way to pull away first, and we'll join in the fight?" "Feng Xin, where's your bow and arrows?" Feng Xin was just climbing the rocks on the side, ready to capture that fetus spirit that was currently crazily spitting and slithering its tongue at him. When he heard the call, he answered, "All right, I'm coming." However, Xie Lian instructed, "Continue, don't stop. Attack just below the right ribs." "Your Highness," Feng Xin shouted, "that set of armor is powerful, it might not crack even after hundreds of blows from the saber." Xie Lian was adamant, "Don't worry, just listen to me. There's no need for that many blows." Hua Cheng didn't question why either, and continued attacking non-stop with the saber. Suddenly, where the blade brushed by, a crack appeared. Blood spurted out. Yi Ming's blade had cut into Zhen Wu's abdomen, just below his right ribs. Hua Cheng was standing in front of Zhen Wu, gripping the saber single-handedly, his eyes cold and sharp as he stared him in the eyes. Meanwhile, Xie Lian stood on Zhen Wu's side, and Rui used this chance to whip out, binding Zhen Wu's hands, preventing him from moving to block. On the side, Mu Qing was shocked. How is that possible? That 1,000-year white armor, how could it be so easily cut through by Hua Cheng? Xie Lian yanked Rui back tight, eyeing Zhen Wu. "Have you forgotten? 800 years ago, you and I fought once." Then it dawned on Feng Xin and Mu Qing. The second ascension? At the time, Xie Lian requested for Zhen Wu to banish him once more, and to compete for measure for a round. Although in that battle, it was promised that neither party would show mercy, but thinking back now, Zhen Wu must have still held himself back. But Xie Lian himself used everything he got. He unleashed over 3,000 swords. Among them, over 400 managed to stab Zhen Wu, and in those 400 some swords, more than 100 had pierced this place. Xie Lian relentlessly shot over 3,000 swords to attack Zhen Wu, and finally broke through that 1,000-year white armor that was impenetrable, and pierced right into his abdomen below the right ribs. And it was the very place Hua Cheng's saber had cut it in this moment. So, 800 years ago, Xie Lian had already left an old scar upon this white armor, and it'd only take 3 slashes from the saber for Hua Cheng to crack it. Hua Cheng's saber was also much sharper than Xie Lian had imagined. The scimitar rammed through the abdomen, a blow that was definitely critical. He only sighed a breath in relief mentally when he heard head priest yell, "That's no use." Logically, having suffered grave injuries, Zhen Wu's actions should have been restrained, but he had only lowered his head to give the wound a glance, his expression unchanging. Right as Xie Lian sensed something was off, Zhen Wu's hands moved slightly. Immediately, Xie Lian heard the light sound of something tearing, and at the same time, his hold loosened. Rui was ripped. That white silk band had been torn into two, and suddenly dropped to the ground lifelessly. The next second, Xie Lian felt his neck being choked, and then his entire person was pulled up. He heard Hua Cheng exclaim, "Your Highness!" But that voice suddenly became distant. Jun Wu's voice, however, was still only inches away, and he spoke up. "Xian Le, did you actually believe that something like being pierced by the sword is something I have less experience in than you? Did you think I would care?" Head priest said from the distance. "Even if you all pierce him with the blade hundreds of times, it'd still be of no use. Because he seems unable to feel pain at all anymore." Xie Lian could take a long sword penetrating his heart without flinching, and Jun Wu was also the same. Feng Xin had already pulled open his bow and was aiming at Jun Wu, but when he heard head priest he dropped it again. "What? Then doesn't that mean even if we manage to make a hit, it's still pointless?" Mu Qing spoke up. "I might as well tell you all another bad news I have observed. I suspect his recovery speed is faster than the speed he's receiving blows." "What?" On the other side, Xie Lian could already verify that this was indeed fact. His wound had been so terrifying, and if this was anyone else they would have had their waist completely slashed through, yet the wound had already stopped bleeding. "No need to be so surprised," Jun Wu said. "If you are constantly stabbed in the back, if you don't make yourself recover immediately, then wouldn't you have died for 1,000 times over already? But the two of you are certainly quite something." He smiled. "In these 800 years, I've only been wounded by one sword and one saber, and it was from the two of you." Crimson Rain Softflower, stand further away. "You wouldn't want to see me wring Xian Li's neck." Hua Cheng's face was dark, the sharpness in his eyes tempesting. But when he saw Jun Wu holding Xie Lian hanging over the heaven-crossing bridge, with one release of his hand and Xie Lian would plummet into the lava pool hundreds of yards below. A moment later he reluctantly withdrew his saber, resting a hand behind his back, and slowly backed away for a few steps. He appeared rather calm, but the scimitar under his arm was giving him away. Yiming was greatly agitated, its eyeballs spinning like crazy, staring madly at Xie Lian. Hua Cheng had backed away to the edge of the heaven-crossing bridge before Jun Wu said, "That's good enough." With Xie Lian in his hold, the two looked each other in the eyes. Then a moment later, Jun Wu suddenly slammed Xie Lian into the wall of rocks nearby. The smashing was too violent. Xie Lian's entire head was ringing, blood running from his nose and lips in a mess, flowing down the contours of his face. In the distance there seemed to be many people yelling in alarm, but he couldn't identify who they all were, and could only hear Jun Wu speak softly in his ear. "Xian Le, does it hurt when your head is smashed against the wall?" Xie Lian couldn't quite process the question, so he didn't respond. Thus, Jun Wu gripped him and slammed him into the rocks again before questioning. "Does it hurt? Does it hurt? Does it hurt?" With each question he'd slammed Xie Lian into the rocky wall, so hard Xie Lian started screaming, but what he was screaming was, "San Lang, don't come over. I'm fine, I'm fine. You must absolutely not come over. At least not right now." The opportune moment hadn't yet come, but the first slam Hua Cheng was already ready to charge over. But he hadn't taken 2 steps before he heard Xie Lian telling him not to go over, so he forced himself to stop. But his face had turned completely savage, and the veins on the back of his hands also looked like they were going to burst, his entire arms shaking. Jun Wu was expressionless, but his hand was ramming Xie Lian into the rocks like crazy, asking him repeatedly, "Does it hurt? Does it hurt?" Head priest exclaimed, "Your Highness." But who knows who he was calling for? Xie Lian's bloody hands pushed against the uneven surface of the rocky wall, gritting his teeth as he roared, "It hurts." Only then did Jun Wu smile with satisfaction, and spared Xie Lian's poor head, putting him on the ground. Xie Lian was still hugging that ringing head of his, sitting on the ground, tears and blood flowing uncontrollably down his face. Jun Wu crouched down next to him, stared at his face for a while, then suddenly raised his hands and petted Xie Lian's head before gently helping him wipe away the blood on his face. This gesture was warm and affectionately kind, like a father crouching next to the child who had just been beaten black and blue by himself, comforting him. This picture was raising hairs on both Feng Xin and Mu Qing's backs. Has he really gone mad? The fingers of the hand Hua Cheng rested on the saber was cracking, and the pupil of Yiming's eyeball was rapidly shrinking, as if it was going bloodshot. Xie Lian didn't breathe a word, letting Jun Wu help wipe him clean. Jun Wu then muttered to himself, "You foolish child, if it hurts, why don't you turn back? Did you think if you keep smashing, the wall will fall down on its own? Why don't you change your own course of direction?" "I won't turn back," Xie Lian stated. Jun Wu was extremely violent, raising his hand and smacked so hard Xie Lian fell to the ground in a loud thud. Xie Lian was still going dizzy when Jun Wu picked him up. Using a voice like he was almost losing his patience, he said, "Must you anger me like this? Let me ask you again, will you change?" Xie Lian coughed twice, coughing out a mouthful of blood. "I won't." A crack finally appeared on Jun Wu's gentle expression, a flash of savageness flickered. Head priest's face was turning green, and seeing the situation going downhill, he hastily shouted, "Your Highness, you never wanted to kill this child, you really like him. You said so yourself, have you forgotten?" Jun Wu sneered. "If that wasn't the case, then I wouldn't have exhausted all of my patience and tolerance on him alone in the past 800 years. He would have long since become part of the Heavenly Capital's foundation, and trampled by millions." He turned to Xie Lian, suddenly outraged. "But he doesn't know what's good for him. Stubborn, capricious, disobeying of my every word. He just had to go against me. You won't change, will you? Very well. Then why don't we see if this wall will fall if your head is cracked open?" Head priest saw him lifting Xie Lian again and quickly yelled, Your Highness, His Highness, Little Highness is still immature. Just let him go this time, let it go. He will understand one day." Jun Wu glanced at him, and his chuckle grew colder. "Did you think I've really gone mad? Don't lie to me. The one you truly think is immature isn't him, but me, no." Head priest was taken aback, and Jun Wu added, "You've spent so much of yourself in nurturing him, teaching and guiding him, purely because you had hoped he could win against me, so you can prove that I was wrong and you were right, that you were all in the right. So you can hold the illusion of a perfect crown prince of Wuyang to face and dismiss the Jun Wu now. Isn't that your objective? Did you think I don't know what you're thinking? That's not it." Head priest cried. "Stop getting tied up in right and wrongs, victories and defeat. I've never thought that way before." But Jun Wu had stopped listening, and he raised his voice, his tone sharp. "Forget it. Let me tell you right now, you can all forget it. No one can win against me. Especially him." He laughed maniacally, then dragged Xie Lian and slammed him towards the rocks, smashing as he yelled, "Will you change? Will you change? Will you change?" It was as if Xie Lian had gone mad too, and he gripped Jun Wu's arms, roaring, I won't change." Even though the smashing was making him see stars, incomparably painful, but he held this breath in stubbornly, refusing to give the desired answer at all, and cried as he roared, "I just won't change. Even if it's painful, I won't change. Even if I die, I won't change. I'll never change." Now, it wasn't Jun Wu who was driving him mad, it was him driving Jun Wu mad. Both of Jun Wu's eyes were red, and just as he was about to strike another blow to discipline him, his action suddenly came to a halt. He looked down, and saw a long saber was struck into his shoulder, and 8 long arrows made of sticks were neatly pinned on his back. None of that mattered, since the long saber and the arrows didn't penetrate the white armor. However, his right hand was gone. The hand grabbing Xie Lian was gone. All of it vanished from his wrist, the cut neat and clean. Xie Lian was also gone. When he turned his head, something with a sharp, forceful wind was coming right at him. He swung his left hand and caught it, and only noticed when he saw that it was his own right hand. Across the heaven-crossing bridge, Wu Cheng held Xie Lian, who was completely covered in blood. A hand was gripping the scimitar in a reverse hold, hugging Xie Lian's shoulders. The other hand was covering the wounds on his head. He said chillingly, "Take back that filthy hand of yours." Xie Lian was too stubborn and refused defeat, finally enraging Jun Wu, and made him expose weak points. Jun Wu clutched that right hand, and tacked it onto his own wrist anew, twisting it a couple times to work it out, then pulled out the arrows on his back. Suddenly, like he remembered something, he turned his head back, and looked at the pale-faced Mu Qing, who was gripping the long saber. Having their eyes met, Mu Qing was slightly startled, but he still bold-headedly forced himself to remain calm. But it wasn't long before he could no longer keep calm. Jun Wu glanced at his shoulder, and commented lightly, "I knew it. Compared to Xian Le, you're still lacking." Hearing this, Mu Qing's face changed slightly, but the long saber in his hand suddenly dropped, and soon after his face changed colors completely. He pulled his sleeve up to look at his wrist, and saw the black cursed shackle suddenly tightened, the veins and nerves around it bulging around, as if endless blood was gathering towards it. Feng Xin saw Mu Qing was petrified and unmoving, and shouted, "What are you doing just standing there? Run!" Head priest berated, "Feng Xin, you little idiot, how can he run with those injuries on his legs?" Feng Xin was shocked. "Fuck, I completely forgot about that." If this was the past, Mu Qing would more than likely roll his eyes all the way back in anger, but now, even if he ran it'd be pointless. With the cursed shackle on his hand, it wouldn't matter where he ran off to. Feng Xin swore and was just about to go up, when unexpectedly, after Jun Wu had pulled out the arrows on his back, he flipped his hand and threw them towards him. Feng Xin only felt his chest go cold, and when he looked down, those 8 arrows were all returned, neatly and orderly, piercing his chest. Jun Wu walked languidly towards Wu Cheng and Xie Lian. Wu Cheng didn't look at him at all, hugging Xie Lian. Gurgur, gurgur. Xie Lian had suffered severe blows earlier, and it took a while before he literally came to, his head still throbbing, but before his eyes even blinked open, he muttered, "San Lang, are you alright?" Wu Cheng gazed at him for a moment, and suddenly pressed him hard into his arms, replying softly, "I'm completely fine. Why don't you take a look at yourself?" Xie Lian clung onto his embrace, and while the hug was very tight, none of the wounds were pressured. He opened his eyes strenuously, and all the disorder around fell into his vision. Mu Qing was frozen on the spot, a hand tightly clutching the other wrist, seeming to be fighting for control with that blood-sucking cursed shackle, but by how pale his face looked, he might not hang on for much longer. Feng Xin, on the other hand, while he wasn't pierced through by those 8 arrows, nevertheless the wounds were significant, and he was slumped over the bridge. That fetus spirit was howling demonically in high spirits, jumping up and down around him, then used its back foot to madly step on Feng Xin's face. Feng Xin was outraged, but he still couldn't move, otherwise his injuries would worsen. Meanwhile, the entire Heaven Cross Bridge was caving in, stretch by stretch, block by block, and they might collapse down with it at any moment. Xie Lian took all of this in, and jolted, wanting to get up. Wu Cheng assisted him, and the two rose to their feet, their eyes moving forward together. The figure of Jun Wu, who was languidly walking towards them, appeared particularly giant from the firelight all around, dropping an immense shadow. Xie Lian wiped hard at the blood around his eyes, nose and mouth, staring deadly at that figure. Jun Wu was holding Zhu Xin at a slant. The sword body of Zhu Xin was gathered with incessantly flowing spiritual powers. At this moment, he was so calm and at ease that he was practically a different person than the Dunwu who was manically ramming Xie Lian onto the rocks. Xian Le, you know very well that there is no doubt of your defeat. Dunwu understood Xie Lian too well. He knew exactly how he would fight, and his spiritual powers also overwhelmingly overtook him. Moreover, even if they hadn't exchanged blows, Xie Lian could still sense that Dunwu's battle aura and spiritual powers were even stronger now. With Mount Tonglu as his territory, the restrictions on their side was growing more obvious. Xie Lian thought inwardly, what he said was probably true. He couldn't win. But even if he couldn't win, he had to fight. However, Hua Cheng suddenly spoke up, no. Your Highness, you can win. Xie Lian was taken aback and looked at him. Hua Cheng was also gazing at him. You can win. You're stronger than him. His one eye was bright, as if something was burning, and he said with certainty, believe me, he's wrong. You're in the right. You're stronger than him. You're much more powerful than him. Dunwu let out a deep and quiet chuckle, probably because he thought Hua Cheng's words were naive and amusing, or perhaps he was pleased by the domineering power in his hands. The power of millions of believers were all in his hands alone. But Hua Cheng gripped his shoulders. So what? They're just millions of fools, they're all useless trash. But for you, one person is enough. One person was enough. Xie Lian hadn't yet wrapped his head around it before Hua Cheng pulled him close. Xie Lian's eyes widened. Spiritual powers exploded and rushed in. This time it was more indomitable than any other times they transferred spiritual powers. Even the deathly spirit butterflies and the molten resentful spirits seemed to have felt this horrifying energy, exploding, one after the other all around them, exploding and shrieking. Xie Lian's fingers were going numb, his legs also shaking so much he was going to fall to his knees, and he kept crying stop in his mind, no more. But Hua Cheng's hand was firmly locked on his head, not letting him leave, refusing his refusal. Who knows how much time had passed when suddenly, Xie Lian's throat relaxed, and at the same time, Hua Cheng finally released him. Xie Lian's knees buckled, falling to the ground, his hands strenuously supporting himself off the ground so he wouldn't fall over completely. Dunwu stopped in his step and looked over, his face solemn. Feng Shen, who was lying in the distance, said in disbelief, Your Highness, you're... Reaching out with trembling hands, Xie Lian felt his own neck. There was nothing. Hua Cheng had poured too much spiritual powers into him. There really was too much, so much it was completely outside the amount the cursed shackle could withstand. Those two bands of fetters that had constrained him for 800 years had burst and shattered. End chapter.